Sit there and wait for the stuff to dry. Ah, lovely, lovely. Well, welcome very much to Dame Johanna's Silk Extravaganza. Yay! So as you can see from the decor, I had a lot of fun pulling silk out of all of my pockets, and this is not all of it. This is just the stuff that I could figure out how to hang up in this space. But it is a really good smattering of various things you can do with silk. Over here you have my silk veil. You have banner. You have this gigantic red and white banner I made so that you could find the archery. This one here is shaped like a Norse flag. This one would be left over a little bit of another banner, and I said, oh my, why should that go to waste? So I made the banner on it. This here is one of the traditional styles of banners that we have in the SCA, where you have different kinds of heraldry, which we will talk about shortly. And you will see a lot of my personal arms because I like using them. This is Dame Johanna's personal arm. And this thing really works well if I don't touch it these days. Something, yes. It's not supposed to be a flag holder. It's actually supposed to just be, but it's working. Anyway, so as you can see, there's lots of heraldry. There's even more on this side that the camera can't see, but you guys can all see, and maybe we'll give the camera a tour a little later. Your silk packet. If you are online, hopefully we'll be having posted a PDF that you can follow along. Feel free to grab that and check it out.
I will post it under in the description on YouTube.
Fantastic. All right. So first off, we're going to talk about the thickness of silk. Silk comes in a variety of thicknesses, and the one that I use the most often style called habotai. Very shiny on one side, a little bit matte on the other. This is the weight 10, but it's just a little bit more than 8. I highly suggest that you go 10 and up. 8 is what I mostly painted on until quite recently, because that's what I could afford. But I started on 5 and then I moved to 8 and now we're up to 10. And I just talked to another silk painter recently who said, oh, I always use 19.5. And I was like, oh, that explains a lot. Because it is really beautiful. It does hold the silk easier. It makes some of the process easier. It does take up more dye, but then you get a more vibrant effect. So if you can, it's okay. Just put it over on the bench there. Thanks. If you can afford it, go for the higher level of silk. Habotai is really great. There are several different kinds, and I have a little banner here that you can actually go check out and feel the different weights of silk that are available to you from Dharma Trading, which is where I get most of my silk. There are other places you can get it. Here in Eugene, you can get it at Eugene Textiles occasionally. But Dharma Trading has pretty good prices, and they have a lot of variety. They also have colored silk, and on the table you will see a whole bunch of different colors that they have, and you'll be able to check that out. So we'll give a little tour for the camera audience a little bit later about that. I use the habotai because I like the finish and I like how it flutters. It does not take much to make that flutter. If you get the chamoose and some of the heavier ones, it will flutter nicely, but it will still take just a little bit more. You'll want to hand wash your silk if you get it in a bolt, and even if you get the pre-hemmed varieties, you probably should still hand wash it. It's really awful to have made a beautiful banner and then have a spot right in the center of it where some either fingers rubbed it or some of the cocoon remnants got into the fabric, or just some gum from the factory or something. It washes out easily. If you didn't wash it, you may be stuck with a spot on your beautiful banner.
So are you saying that, like those things will stop the dye from wearing?
Absolutely. The dye just will not stick if it's got that gum residue on it. So also your silk will shrink. So that is going to make a difference. If it gets wet, you'll want to get it wet. Now, this silk here on these little banners, I pinned it to the frame, and I'll talk about how I did that. But then after I pinned it, I didn't worry about ironing it or making it flat. It was terribly wrinkled when I put it on the frame. And you just spritz it with a squirt bottle, and the tension that it's under just irons it flat beautifully. It's fantastic. I love it. Okay, designing your silk banner. After you figure out what kind of silk you're going to put it on, then you need a shape and a size, and you're going to need a design. You can see there's lots of options. Usually you buy 36-inch wide silk or 45-inch wide silk, because those are pretty, you don't really want to get bigger than that because it's hard to reach the center of 45-inch silk already. If you get bigger than that, I do have one banner that I painted, which I will hang up after a while when there's a lull, and it is 72 inches long. It's ridiculously huge. And I actually had to build a scaffolding to be able to make it because I couldn't reach the center of it once it was on the frame. It was really fun. You want to know what you're putting on your banner. And since we're doing an SCA version of this stuff, you want to know what is yours. These are the heraldic symbols that we have here in Lane County. You have, and it's also on your packet, you have the lion's head. Now there's several different symbols for ontir. There is the lion's head itself. There is the lion's head on checky inside of a black ring. And there is the ensign, which is just a black band with checky yellow and white following it in a tierce pattern. So that's 3 yellow and white. So it's 1, 2, 3 plus black band. And those 3 things mean I'm a citizen of Ontir. What you can't have is the full coat of arms. That's just for the king or for a kingdom officer, somebody holding an official position. Same thing goes for the summits. We get the blue grail. It's really pretty and it goes on a lot of stuff. And I put fancy blue border around mine with swirly cues because there's nothing that says you can't. But that is your symbol of I'm from the summits. So yay. Then you can't have the mountain and the grail and the griffin. That's for the prince, and with the barberries for the princess. But what you do get is this awesome blue grail, which is easy to draw and easy to put on anything you want. Then for the barony of Adiantum, we have the double-headed bears. And we have several iterations of the double-headed bears. The ones on the black banner here are some of my favorites. They were drawn when I was new, and I thought they were so adorable and charming, and they're not scary at all. And instead of being a bear that's like, I'm gonna eat you, it's like a bear that's like, hey, come play with me. And I just love it so much. So that's on a lot of my stuff. We also have what I call the fierce bears. They kind of look friendly fierce. They're more like, but sort of in a swashbuckling, friendly-ish way. It's not actually terrifying or disgusting, even though they have red tongues sticking out of their mouths. So it's kind of impressive how they were well drawn. And you will see that on our business cards. And do I have any on my banner here? No. But if you don't have, you will see them when we put them up on the wall on these, because we're going to do my fierce bears on our pennants that we're going to make in a little while. Okay, on your herald, on your thing here, you can see I also have on this banner, and it is actually this banner, my symbol of archery, which I created to do the ranking scores in Ontir, so that I could be like, I'm an archer, and show off that I had made that rank. And then I didn't have the red rank when I made the banner. I just kept adding to it later on. You can do that, but then of course my arms, but this banner's been around for a while. Something else about this banner, you can see that this banner, I was still learning how to work with the Gouda. And there are things I know that I can tell you now about how to not get those extra black lines. The main thing is don't leave silk in a baggie in the sun. It doesn't like to be inside plastic in the sun. It's not happy. Okay. Contrast. because heraldry is all based on color combinations that are visible at a distance. Finn, can you dig around in that pile there for me and see if you can find a banner that is blue and says Jesus is my Lord on it? I want to show you my banner that I learned about contrast. I made a banner at the beginning and I was like, oh, these heralds, sure, they probably know what they're talking about, but I like these colors. I like blue and red. I'll put them together. It's not that one. Keep digging. Good try. And I was one of the first banners I made. It's really pretty. I put it up on my tent down at the coast where we were camping, and I was walking back to the tent and I looked at it and I went at a distance. It was only about 40 yards away. And I went, oh, I see. I can't read that. Now up close, I could read it. Nope, it's smaller than that one. Keep digging. I told you I didn't have all the silk hanging up. And I realized the heralds actually know what they're talking about. That's it. Come on, bring it over here. Thank you so much. I just forgot to get it and set it on the table. So as you can see, I put red letters on blue. You can see it just fine, but at a distance, it completely vanishes, as in completely vanishes. The yellow stands out just fine, but the red on the blue completely vanished. So do follow the heraldic rules. If you don't have an access to the Herald's Primer, send me a contact. I will send you a link. It's my favorite get into. I know I gave it to you guys. Get into heraldry and find out what they are. Okay, next is Mr. Susolt did a beautiful thing about actual heraldic, authentic banners of the times. We're not doing exactly that. We are doing a modern iteration with silk, with this particular Sertai method, where you put on a resist and then you put on dye, and the dye flows until it bumps into the resist. They didn't, I don't have proof of them having done it that way. Mr. Susolt has a lot of stuff about how they used applique, and also for the style of the banner that should go with your persona if you care. I just make everything, and I'm not trying to recreate a specific time period, but that's just me. If you want a specific time period, she has from 800 to 1500 banner research that is excellent, and I can get you a link to that. Let's talk about the frame. Now you know what size of banner you want to do. A lot of people use wood. I use PVC because it's very flexible. I can always make a different size very quickly, and it has been my experience that no matter what size everybody wanted last time I paint silk, the next time everybody wants a different size. So this has worked really well for me. Also, when I started, people were using the thread to sew on the banners, and I'm not going to hand sew like that. And I was going to paint a lot of silk. So I was very thankful. That gave me the idea for this rubber band method. So it is super easy to do. You take your silk, and I'm not the only one who has this method, but nobody told me about it. I have seen other people use it now, but when I learned, it wasn't something I had ever heard anyone talk about. So take a pin, you poke it into the silk, back out of the silk. That easy. So now it is caught in the silk. If you have a hem, that's going to be way easier for your silk. If you don't have a hem, make sure you're in a good 1/8 of an inch, because otherwise you'll just pull right out of your silk. It's going to be under tension. Okay, so you put that in there like that. Then you take a rubber band, stay, don't go sliding. Take a rubber band and you hook it over this. Can I use a finger? And then you go around your frame and hook it back over the rubber band. That's how simple it is. And you see how fast it is? Plus, you're able to adjust your tension slightly. I want it to be a little tighter in this one corner. Just add another rubber band. It tensions it up really well. Was that a question or a hello? Just a hello. No, okay. All right, so that's how simple it is. As you can see in the corner, I took a picture and then I tried to draw a sort of diagram so that you have, if you get home and are like, wait a minute, how did she say to do that? You can use paper safety pins, and they make and sell many different kinds of clips if you want to hook on, but I'm a little, I don't know, I'm a to-go person. I tend to transport stuff, move it around. I'm not gentle enough. And so I do have pins escape. So if I'm going to transport silk, I will use safety pins. If I'm just going to be working on it in one space, I'll use the straight pins. I also suggest having a magnet on a stick so you can find all the pins later. It's very helpful. It is surprising how far a pin can go if it's under tension of a rubber band and it comes a little tiny bit loose. You can go a long ways. I like to use the little white-headed glass-headed white pins, not the blue ones. I get these at Joann's and they are stiff enough where the blue ones are too thin and they will bend under the tension. Isn't that sad for me? Because I would like to have the blue ones, but I have to buy the white ones. And they work really well. You want to be very careful what pins you use. If you use bad pins, this is going to be wet. It will rust. Don't use bad pins. You don't want rust spots on your beautiful banner. All right, tracing. Now we use either a cartoon, which is where you have a paper drawing and you actually lay the silk on the paper drawing. Silk is so thin that you can see right through it quite easily. So you can actually see what it would be like here. You just draw something on a piece of paper, you can actually see right through the silk. The trick with that is that you just then have to actually stabilize your drawing and your silk both. I did a lot of tracing on our patio door because I could tape the silk there. I had backlight coming through, so I had a lot of good lighting. Put the silk on the frame, taped the frame to the glass door, and the only problem was then you can't let anyone in and out that door for a while, because what you can't do is you can't move it. If you move it, you're never going to match those lines all up again. It doesn't matter how big or small your silk is, lines don't match up once you've moved it, so plan accordingly. Okay. Kitchen table would work. You don't have the backlighting then, so all of your lights reflecting off the silk, but if you can, and also, so with the silk, it's not actually flush with the table, so you're going to have to press down, which is fine, you can do that, but you're not going to be able to see it unless you press down. Always make sure that you wipe your hands before working with silk, because your hands produce oils, and that will get on your silk, also will cause there to be spots. So I have a little box over here with wipes. When you go to start doing stuff with silk, grab a wipe out of the box, wipe hands. Wherever you want to be working with your cartoon, that is fine. I don't use cartoons anymore. I had boxes of cartoons and I would print them out and laboriously tape them together and hope that my printer was accurate, which it usually wasn't, and then try to fuddle things and fidget, and then I would put the frame up there and the frame didn't fit, and then I would have to rework and I'd have to figure it out again. And if I wanted to make a little change, it was a whole big job. Some people are good with just freehanding. You'll be great. You don't need to trace anything. You'll just be like right onto the silk. It'll be fine. But that's not what I do anymore. Now I use projector. And the way that we unplug them. But I use my ability to be able to make silk that was. I had a board that I worked on for a while. I think we worked on the table. Now my is oh, hi, thank you. My limitation is the wall size here in my church gym. So that being said, that's a long wall and I painted a 30-foot banner on it. So it's not actually limiting. Even with the projector, you can only do about 10 feet at a time, but I did a 10-foot space, moved it over, did the other 10-foot space. And so I did the Kingdom War banners and the 30-foot banner on that wall. And projectors are amazing because once you can project, you can literally throw anything up there that you want. You can sit there and adjust the size, and then you can find out, oh, that doesn't quite look right. Tweak it on your computer. You're not having to rewrite the whole thing. You're not having to draw a new cartoon. It's super nice. Pencils. You want to be very careful what kind of a pencil you use. I love this pencil because it's blue and sparkly and it looks so much fun, but I would never use this pencil for silk because it is not a high quality pencil and it has a terrible eraser. If you forgot and used this old eraser on your silk, you would put a permanent mark on there that you wouldn't be able to get, like it would mess with your dye. It would leave a line. Don't do it. Don't have them near your silk painting. I prefer the Ticonderoga. I think that they work really, really well. They have the right amount of graphite to give you a nice firm line, but they don't have whatever fillers or oils other pencils have where the lines stay as badly. They really come out of the silk pretty well. Even if I make a mistake and have to erase, the Ticonderogas work much better. And I prefer the sparkly ones or the black ones. So when you get over to my pen cup, you will find out that most of mine are really sparkly. And that way I know that I've got the right kind of pencil. You don't want a sharp tip on your pencil. You want to sharpen your pencil, but then you want to scrubby-dubby-dub with your pencil. And actually, if you look over on the wall over there, there's a Post-it note and it has little scribbles on it. That's because I got up to the wall with a pencil and I realized it was too sharp and it's going to poke a hole through your thing. So you just find a piece of paper and scrub a little of that tip off so that you have a nice pointy tip. You don't want a wide, blunt tip, but you don't want it to have that sharp little tip on there, or when you go to do a line, or if you come backwards just a little bit, it's going to just poke right through. Same thing, you want to be drawing away from the point of the pencil so that you don't poke into your silk. So wherever you're drawing, think about go toward the eraser. So depending on how you're doing a line, you might be going up or you might be going down, but flip your pencil over. So go up, you go down like that. Don't go up with the point of the pencil. Okay, does everybody understand what I'm saying with the pencils? Good. Now, if you're using the same color resist to make your whole entire banner, you can just draw the pencil lines and it's not going to matter. But sometimes you're going to have a design where you want different colored lines. Here, this banner has a really good indication of this. This one here has silver lines and gold dots. So I would need to know which lines I would want it to have the silver and which I wanted to have the black and which I wanted to have gold. On this, it was just artistic. One of the places that it gets more fiddly is if you're doing some heraldry, like the Kingdom heraldry, which is actually on the next page of your packet. And there are lines which are a black line, and then all of a sudden it becomes a silver line. It's going into the center of the black, and it needs to be that line to be able to be seen. If it's just a black line, you will not see it. So it becomes a silver line. So you're going to need to know where those go. So think about that when you're planning, if you need to do a different kind of pencil mark, or if you just can hold that in your head, or have a little image that you're copying right next to you when you go to do the Buddha. Let's talk about the Buddha. This method uses resist, which functions a lot like puffy paint. How many of you have ever used puffy paint? Yes, most of you have used puffy paint. Okay, good. Then I don't have to explain a lot. It is a little squeeze bottle that you will want to be using with a very, very fine tip. And something that is not, I can't tell you how many years I spent trying to figure out which tip was which. And then I think somebody just happened to offhand mention it one time. There are little tiny lines on these two lines, and it's bigger than there's one line. So yeah, just if you get one of these bottles, check and see if it has lines to tell you how big it is. These particular bottles are no longer available, which is too bad because they're very flexible and nice. There are some that I found on Amazon we'll be using today, and they will work, but they're not as flexible. So finding the supplies to do the silk painting has been significantly more difficult after the pandemic. I actually had to rewrite my entire class because most of the things that I was using no longer exist. And so we're relearning a lot of things, and it's an interesting process. This particular banner I actually made in my last silk class to show how this works. But today I'm going to do it a little bit differently because we're actually making the banners ourselves. Different kinds of resists. This is the resist that I absolutely loved. I can no longer get it. And it's probably a good thing because one of the other silk artists I know just told me she had cancer right after having been using this. And so it is definitely, it says on the label, caution, use a mask. So if you're going to use this kind of the chemical Gluta-Resist with the thinner, make sure you follow directions, use a mask. We do not want to have anybody getting sick from making beautiful things. There are water-based resists. You have to make sure that you get them very well shaken up. And some of them work better than others. I've tried a couple different ones. Make sure you check your labels to see if this is going to be washed out with water or if you need Centerpol or some other kind of removal agent. This stuff stays in, this stuff washes out. This can be removed, not the black lines, but the gooey parts can be removed with dry cleaning, but that's a whole different process. When I'm painting these banners, the lines just stay. At least you hope they stay. Some of the metallics with this stuff is a lot fussy, very fussy. The metallics made of this water resist, which I've had to move to, and it's been a little bit of a getting used to process for me, but since you guys will start with it, it'll be great. It doesn't smell at all. And it washes off yourself mostly with water. So like I have a little bit of black on me, but my hand was pretty black earlier and it washed off where this stuff doesn't wash off ever for weeks. so this is great. There's some really great things about it. It does flow pretty well. And I'm actually quite pleased with it. I made the Queen's tail banner with it. It came out great. So they have several different colors of gold and black and silver. I haven't found a white that I like yet, but we will keep finding. I mean, I have some white. Once again, another thing you can't get because it doesn't exist anymore. So I have a little bit left. And when it runs out, we will have to see what we can find out. Handy dandy squirt bottle. Make sure that you have a handy dandy one that you know has just clean water in it. Nothing like hair gel or cleaning supplies or something else. You don't want to be surprised what comes out of your squirt bottle. Yes, question.
So I know it's kind of small.
Mm.
So how far does that go the bottle? So how big is that?
It depends on how heavy your lines are. If you are doing heavier lines, it will go less far, but I used 3 of these bottles and painted 20 banners. So it does actually go quite a long ways. If you're going to paint banners for yourself or your family, 1 or 2 bottles should be fine. The difficulty is with this, it goes less far if you forget and leave it in the little bottle for too long and it comes up and then you have to throw it away. You need to put it back in the bottle after you use it. I tend to keep it in these if I'm going to be painting banner after banner after banner, but if you put your banner making stuff away, make sure you clean everything out really well, throws away. Something I forgot to say about tracing. Clear rulers, your friends. You don't already have a sewing ruler like this if you're going to be doing silk that has straight lines. Now, if you're doing silk that has flowing lines, you won't need one of these very badly. But if you're going to do anything with straight lines, having a clear ruler is amazing. I also have one that is flexible because sometimes, like for instance, with the banner we're going to be making today, it's floppy. And so you can put it up over the edge and you don't have to work it through behind the frame to be able to use it. But a clear ruler is an amazing tool. All right, having a test swatch is always handy. So if you get yourself a little piece of silk or something, this is my newest way of doing it. I used to just kind of hold it in my hand and put stuff on it. And then I realized, why not end up with something pretty? I was doing a banner for Prince Luciano and Princess Christina, and it was so intricate and detailed. It wasn't a heraldic banner, it was an art banner with the little monkey and octopus, and it was really cool. But when I was doing it, I was like, I need to know what color this is going to come out and how it's going to look between the monkey and the octopus. And so I actually kind of drew a little version, just a little sketch, and then I would do the colors that I was like, oh, this looks better. And then you can add a little bit, and then you're not testing on your big banner. You don't really want to be testing on your big banner. Can have, but you want to be testing on something. A little embroidery hoop works really great for holding it stiff so that you can just draw a little design on, practice with your Gouda, do a little practicing. And this is what you guys will get to do a little bit of practice on to begin with before you start on that so that you feel very confident. It's super simple to do this. Let me check my list here and make sure I've gotten everything that needs to be said. Nope, I haven't. All right, when you're working with the Gouda, down at the bottom of your page, you will see the different kinds of what your resist will look like when you squirt it on. You want a good solid line. You want it to be thick enough that when the dye flows across the silk, it bumps into the line and it doesn't go woohoo right over the top. Now with this stuff, the one thing that was incredible about this is you could put this on and paint immediately. You weren't supposed to, but you totally could. I usually did. And it also helped if I made a mistake and it kind of like went over the line. I was like, oh, grab the resist, don't slip, and then make a new line right next to it. And you wouldn't even know. But the water-based stuff, because we're using a dye that is water-based, can't do that. So, well, you can, but it's going to bleed pretty badly. As you can see here on this yellow flower, this is what it does because I forgot that I was using water-based, did what I normally do, and was like, okay, put the resist on, test this color, and it went, oh, that's right, this is not the same stuff I'm used to. So you can see how ooky this is if you don't let it dry, which is why we're going to have tea and a movie and let our resist dry today. We don't want that. You want to have a nice firm line, but you also don't want to have such a hard line of resist that you put on so blurpy that it then creates this really hard edge on your banner. Any hard edge, the wind will take out and it will cause it to fray more. As you can see, right along these resist lines is where the banner has failed right here. It also failed along the seam line. This part of it's all okay, but the edges will fray because the wind is flipping it around. And this one has gone out and been flown quite a lot. But as you can see right here, this one hasn't actually frayed out as much because there wasn't the resist right along the edge. So just think about that when you're designing the banner. Resist is one of the fail points for your banner. So if you can do a field around your edge, it's probably a better plan than a fancy border because the fancy border is more likely to fail. However, for the years you're flying it, you may still want the fancy border. I do. Okay. Next page. I like to use something to support my arm when I am doing the Gouda. So I will tend to put a ruler or something under it so that I can actually slide my arm along. You would be able to do it on the edge of the frame, except you hit a rubber band. Rubber bands are sticky and they also jiggle your silk. So you'll be going along and go, you know, some people have really steady hands and they can do that, or they can just like, you know, but I find for me, it works better if I put a little board or a stick or something, especially if you're doing a large banner and you're kind of at arm's length. Also think about the fact that your arm doesn't make a straight line. It makes a curve. So you may want to do a little short and then move your elbow and a little short and then move your elbow because you're working with your wrist to make a straight line. If you're making a curve, make use of that radial motion and you'll be able to make curves much easier. All right, the edges. Where your resist line comes to an edge, it's very important that you make sure it is well done, especially if you are painting on a pre-hemmed banner. But I like to give a little tiny extra bit on this edge and always make sure to flip it over and look at the back and make sure that the resist has come to both sides full. It only takes one thread that you didn't get resist on to flow the dye through the neck. So you can see I go a little bit wide on that outside edge. to make it work. If you're using a rolled hem, good luck. Because you can put dye squeezed into the little rolled hem. You put dye around the outside edge, and still you will sometimes have it just like tube, like through that little tube into the next section. So if that happens to you, be like, this is handmade art. This proves it. A machine did not print this. I made it myself. Yay! Don't be a perfectionist. 10-foot rule, guys. 10-foot rule. It's flying, it's fluttering, it's moving, and people are admiring it. Don't be hard on yourselves. I say this because I have to say this to myself repeatedly. Even on the Queen's banner, one of them went right through, and I was like, oh, yeah, I worked so hard. And then I said, gonna look at that and care. Everybody's gonna be like, wow, look at this amazingly gorgeous banner. Stop fussing at yourself about the little tiny itty bitty thing. This is not perfectionism. This is beautiful, beautiful handmade art. All right. You do not want to scrub your paint, even if you're using the kind of resist that washes out, because if you do, you will lose a lot of the paint. I have the resist that washes out. And I was using a dye that is a pigment paint. And so you can see a little bit of the fracturing of the dye where I scrubbed a little too hard on the resist. I wasn't patient. You need to let it sit and soak for a while. You can see this one here, you put on the resist, then you put on the dye over it. And then you let it soak in the water, and the resist breaks down, and then where the resist was, the dye didn't. Now, the dye actually protects your silk from the elements. So this is not a method that I would use with a flag that you're going to put outside, because the dye is protecting your silk. So even sections of the flag that are white, I still paint, even though the silk is white. For one thing, as you can see on my veil there, even though it was painted white, it has discolored over time. I've had that since 2016, and I wear it quite a lot out in the sun. And so you can see on the top there, it's more discolored even than the lower parts, which are more in the shade than the top where it's on my head. So silk by itself will discolor in the sun because it's breaking down the fibers. Okay. Dye. Ha ha ha. So now we get to talk about the fancy colors. So I am using currently Dynaflow and sometimes mixing it with some textile paints, Lumiere. Usually they have a fabric paint that I find works really well. This is my color chart for the Dynaflow's basic set. I got the class pack for my birthday one year. It was so much fun. And you can mix these together. So actually the color options that you have are relatively endless because you could just go on and on and on and mix all kinds of colors. And you can go on and on and on and mix all kinds of colors. So you really have a lot of options. And then when you add in the different kinds of resist, you can get to the light. Okay, can you turn it this way just a little bit more? Because they're not getting the light. There we go. You get to see the different kinds of colors and resists. Oops. And some of the solid. Well, you guys, and you can. You do all the fun things with silk. I just did some fun fanciness for a swatch one time. This is a backgammon game board. It's easily packable. I made Christmas presents one year for my family. This is the one I made for my grandmother to hang up in her window. This is why I trade, because this is my level of hand art. Not great. See all my beautiful work? Yeah, this is what I'm actually capable of. So feel free to trace if it's not your thing to draw by hand. But again, I use quite detailed and have a lot of fun. This is the small version of my escutcheon, which I made larger, but I was testing the small version. And it can be a lot of fun, but I highly advise it. You can also do other things with silk painting. This is my hat. It only has one corner. So we can't do that well. On the back, you have the silk painted thing, and on the sides, you have beautiful flippers. These are actually line after line of feathers, individual lines straight on. So I hand silk painted all of these lines of the feathers of the gigantic tree, and then sew them on in here. And now they just look like flippy. It's really fun. This is one of the other ones that has where you put on the resist that washes out, so there are no lines. So it looks mysterious, and how did that work? If you see one like this, now you know how that works. You put on clear lines and you wash them out. And where you put the dye in between is where you get the color. All of the things that I put on there, everybody should make sure to sign in my sign-in book, because I didn't say that when you came in, and I should have said that when you came in. All right. As you can see on the bottom picture here with the lion, this lion is very fancy and has a lot of lines on it. So thinking about, yes, they got to see it. Thank you. Thinking about where you want your white, where you want your silver, where you want your gold, what color of white do you want? Do you want a bright white? Do you want a muted white? Do you want a sparkly white? Do you want a silver, or do you actually want a white that just has a little bit of iridescent silver in it? All of that, color choices, it's going to make a difference in how the effect hits the eye of the observer. All right. Next page. We're going to talk about the brushes and how this actually works. My Countess Talicia taught me how to silk paint. She had taken a class from Sir Alail that I didn't get to go to, and she came back with the supplies and said, here, you can come try it at my house. And so I came and I tried it and I loved it. And I was terrible at it the first time. She had to actually sit there and say, don't go to the line, don't go to the line, don't go, no, don't go to the line, don't go to the line, don't go to the line. We all learned as children, you color right up to the edge of the line.
Really understand what the real dynamics are there. And his people are having a hard time with this too. I saw some interviews, they're all going, well, we don't want war in the Middle East. We don't want to be.
There we go. Thank you. So what you actually have to do is you have to flow through the dye you're going to put on your paintbrush, and it's just like water. And then you're going to touch the silk, and it's going to go whoosh and flow. So I like to use these Sumi paintbrushes, and if you actually find a good resource for these, please let me know. They are not inexpensive, and so I kind of have one or two for each major color, but they also do, they really don't wear out very much, and if you do get a stray thread or so, you can pluck it out, but they hold a lot of paint and still come to a very nice tip, which it's hard to get with a brush. Like watercolor brushes, they don't hold as much paint usually that I've found. When I'm using larger sections, I'll use a foam brush. But if you're trying to get into an edge or a corner, this is way too easy to have too much in there, and you put a little pressure and it goes right onto your silk. So this, you get a nice, and I've painted whole entire banners with these things, forgetting to use these at all. But if you, so that you know, just a regular foam paintbrush and the Sumi brushes are what I normally use. I tried to buy some new paintbrushes because I knew we were going to have like too many of the same color in this particular project. And the brushes, when they arrived, were way smaller than I was expecting. So there you go. When you buy things online, sometimes they're really tiny. They're adorable and they're blue. They're really tiny. I have 60 of them. So I'm going to have to have a different kind of art class. If you're trying to do a tiny little thing, it is good to use a tiny little brush. But with what we're doing today, we're not going to probably need that tiny. So you want a brush that is flexible and full bodied so it can hold the dye. If you have a favorite kind of brush, go ahead and try it. You may find you like something better than what I have. Feel free to let me know because I might like to try a new thing too. But do remember, this is dye. It is going to dye your paintbrush. And also it is some of the dyes, or if you use the paints, it will leave actual residue. You'll need to work really hard to get that out of your paintbrush or else they will stiffen up pretty badly. And then that will cause the bristles to break and fray. They'll still work, but they'll be stiff and not as flexible. Temperature and humidity can make a difference, and breeze. So for instance, never paint outside. My second silk painting experience, I really didn't think I was ever going to be able to do this because my second silk painting experience was at Eggles, where we were doing a work party, and Celicia brought my banner and I was trying to finish it, and we were sitting there, and this silk banner, it was going, and we would wait, and the wind would die down, and I would get the paint on the brush, and I would, it's just so terrible. It's an indoor project. It really is an indoor project. And also make sure that your family knows to not like turn on the fan right while you're painting that blows on it. Yes, so you want to be checking that. Lines are one of the things that you will find you have less of the heavier silk that you have. But if you are trying to avoid the appearance of lines in your silk, I'm looking around at mine, and a lot of mine are painted with the pigment dyes that I found, so that's not going to help you. I don't think I have anything here that shows it. You will be likely to get lines if you're using the Dynaflow or anything else on an 8 or even 10, 12 mummy silk, because it has to do with the flow of the dye through the fabric, and if it dries, it will create an edge. And then when you paint over it, the edge stays. Sort of like if you're using markers and you do like a line of marker and then you cross over it, that double line of marker is going to show darker. It's the same sort of effect. If you can put on the dye and keep it flowing and it doesn't dry out, then you will be able to kind of push the dye around and you'll fill a bigger space without line. The other way of dealing with it is make them artistic. Just follow your pattern and make it kind of like a haloing effect. So it's like a bigger and a bigger and a bigger line, and then it can be an accent instead of a mistake. You will probably get lines, just saying. The stuff that I found that I could tell you how to not get lines with no longer exists. So go for heavier silk. All right, heat setting. Oh, one other thing. Never give up on your banner. We were doing a class and a lady knocked the entire pot of paint right onto the center of the finished banner. And it was dark blue, just completely blah. And I was like, don't worry about it. We washed off as much as we could, cleaned up as much as we could. And then after it dried, I went over it with the silver detailing paint. And now when you go to an Adiantum event and you see the Summit's banner, you wouldn't even know unless you looked at the back that there was ever a problem, because it's one of the blingiest and brightest because they got some silver and gold. And it's really fun. So don't give up on your banner. Figure out a creative fix for it. Heat setting. To affix most of these dyes, you will need to heat, also the water resist Gouda, you will need to heat set your banner. That is with an iron, and you will need a flat surface, as flat as possible. Your ironing board is actually not a great option because your ironing board usually has some give to it, and the silk is so thin that as you run your iron over it, it can actually crease the silk too easily. So I use this hard top table over here whenever I can. And if not, I might actually use the kitchen counter if you have a surface that can handle a little heat. You don't need to get it too hot. Just the silk setting of your iron is not that hot. You also want to put something above and something below your banner so that it becomes a little sandwich, because sometimes this stuff transfers way too easily, this not so much. But if there's a little bit too much in a spot, sometimes it will leave a little bit of a black line. So use an old sheet. Don't use something very fancy. Yes.
Gonna ask if paper is an option for the above and below. I would assume that a brown paper bag might be some color,
Hmm.
but white paper, like the butcher paper.
I've never used paper because paper isn't usually big enough for what I'm ironing. So I use an old sheet,
Okay,
couple old sheets. I used to have one that I really enjoyed. It looked like an African safari. It was great. And I felt like every time I ironed over it, I could count and like, okay, I've just gotten to that line, because you're ironing for 3 minutes in a section. And so you have to watch something, read a book. You're doing this for a few hours, depending on the size of your banner too. If you're making small banners, this is not going to be as tedious. You tend to be making large banners or lots of them. Last time Gabrielle was reading me a book, it was lovely. I was somewhere else the whole time. And so, just find something that will make it so that it's not difficult. Sleeves for the banners. I like to use blanket binding. And you can buy it on sale or you can buy it at Walmart, which is a lot cheaper than what you'll have to buy it for somewhere else. Just saying. It's really nice. It's already creased. It's already the right size. The edge is already finished. So I just sew this onto the edge of the silk, making sure that I turn over the top and the bottom and do a little bit of a hem there. And then voila, pocket for your banner. And it's about the right size for most banner pulls. You can also tie it on with ribbon. As you can see over here, some of mine have sleeves, some of them have ties. It depends on what you're going to be tying it onto, and if you have time to tie it on, and or if you have a pole that you can slide it over the top. You might not have a pole. It might be easier to just tie it to the arm of your canopy or a tent pole that you already are using. So think about where this thing is going to be used. You can always apply something different if you don't want it. Ribbons are a little bit difficult because they are slippery, but they are nicely finished. I like doing the finger loop braids, but if you're making a lot of banners, that can get very exhausting for the fingers. However, it is a really cool medieval skill to know, and they work very well because they hold very nicely on a pole. The thing you want to be careful of is silk rots if it gets wet. So something that's polyester that dries quickly is very good. You don't want to put a canvas sleeve or a cotton sleeve or something that can get wet and stay wet. This is Oregon. Banners get wet and you don't want them to stay wet, and it's too easy because the silk will be dry and you might not realize that the sleeve was wet, and then the next time you put it up, it may have rotted the silk right there on that line, and whoop, banner's gone. Well, it might not be gone, but it'll be on the ground. So you don't want that. Think about your material for your sleeve. Okay, next page. This is the last page before I actually get to doing it with you. I already said this. Your banner's 10, 20 feet up in the air. Enjoy watching it flutter. Don't be a perfectionist. Don't worry about what you see as flaws. No one else is going to be inspecting your banner for flaws. They're going to be admiring the fact that there's a banner flying. And if you think, oh, I didn't like this one, go paint another one. Go paint another 3. This is a skill. So it does take time and effort to actually get good at a skill. I have to say, I'm still learning, and I've been doing this now for over 10 years. And I really enjoy this skill, but I find that it gets easier the more I do. And yet, if there's a break in between, I painted banners last year, then I got out my stuff this August, I started to paint the banners, and it's just like I couldn't get it. After the first one I got done, I was like, I remember how to do this. And then everything got easier and I got faster and things went really well. So it is a skill. And those of you who also have art in your being, yay for you. You will be able to cut down a lot on the things that I have to do to make it look good, just because you have the ability already. I'm so happy for you. This one here is my test piece to be able to show you how this actually works. So I have done the tracing already and the Gouda-ing on one side. So we will We'll move some of this stuff that I have put in the way here. You'll want to make sure to have something. Can I get you to put that over out of the way? I don't want to get any dye on that. So when you are doing your silk painting, you want to have something that holds it up off the table. Right here, I have a couple of pieces of wood, but I'm going to make sure to arrange them so that the silk isn't touching the wood. The silk is holding up the frame, but if I let the wood be under the silk, then as I'm working on it, I am liable to push it down and touch the wood. If you touch something with the back of the silk, it's going to flow because you're dealing with wet things, and the wet things are not on top, they are through, and that's good. You want them to be through, but if it's through and then you touch the back, there it goes. I did that to myself on one of the last banners I was making. I just didn't have enough clearance underneath, and it's very maddening. All right, this is my waterproof Gouda. One of the things that you also want to have when you're using it is a paper towel or a wipe or something, because your tip will get gummed up with a little bit too much or a little bit that's dry or something, and you want a nice clean tip to be working with. Okay, at this point, I think you want to come up here and watch closer. So bring yourselves up closer. If you want to bring the camera closer, you can. You want to work in the direction that is comfortable for you. I'm right-handed. I'm incredibly right-handed. Can't do anything left-handed properly. So I have to think about where my hand's going to be in relation to where the wet stuff is. Obviously, I don't start over on this side because that would be bad. So here's my hand over on this side. As I said, I like to support something, but since I'm leaning on the table here, I'm pretty well supported, and my hand's just going to just touch the silk. So it's going to flex it a little bit, but I squeeze gently just a little tiny bit out, making a little bit of go at it. Now this side here, because I'm reaching farther, I'm going to lean my arm against the thing here. I'm also using my pinky finger to kind of drag along the silk, just to make it there. Now, the pressure I'm putting on here, I'm actually putting on just a little bit with my thumb. When we get to some of the bottles, they may be a little stiffer, so we're gonna find out how they work. But you just want just enough pressure to be putting a little tiny bit out, and you'll want to kind of test just a little bit on stuff. I'm going pretty fast because I've done a lot of this, so my hands know about the right amount, and it's easier to make a straight line that doesn't squiggle if you keep it moving. If you go too slow, you'll get a nice Minecraft pixelated version. Speaking of which, the art that you are transferring from, you want to make sure that you have actually what you want. When I made the Queen's Tail banner, I had a very hilarious experience because I hadn't actually blown up the kingdom art that big. And the one that I have is apparently not that big. And so it pixelated incredibly badly at that size. And I hadn't realized that's what had happened. I thought it was detailing along the edges, and I was tracing all these like little curlies and and then I got to one part and it was cubes. I was like, that's odd that the tail has like jags like that. I wouldn't have thought the jags would go that way. And make sure that you shake the Gouda down in the bottle so you don't get air bubbles if you tip it up to wipe it. And I was looking at that line and thinking that line just seems odd to me. And I stepped back and looked at it and I was like, oh, it's pixelated. So then I had to go back and fix a whole bunch of lines I had drawn. Happily, the Kingdom heraldry is black, so it didn't matter that I had a whole bunch of lines that the black covered. When you're doing your Gouda, you may find that there's a line that you don't like where it went. I don't like how this line squigs out here. So now my options are to either make the whole stem fatter or to make this side of the stem a little thinner. The problem is I know this is going to be white. So the white, it's going to show that black, that's the one color It's gonna show. On yellow, it probably won't show. On white, it probably will.
Pencil line,
So,
you said?
pencil line.
Okay.
Mhm. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna make this just a little bit whiter up here, because that's gonna be green and it won't matter. And then it doesn't look like it kind of flares out. It just looks like it's that white the whole way. So just pay attention to how you want it to. Oop. I didn't do this one. I'm gonna do this one first. Like I said, you want to make sure you pay attention to the direction of stuff. Now this one, I'm cutting it a little bit close on this edge because this is not hemmed yet. So I normally wouldn't go quite that close to an edge that isn't hemmed because I use a rolled hem on my sewing machine to hem that. And so this will actually be like caught into the rolled hem, which won't be great. So thinking about that, I think I'm going to change my mind and make this a little bit shorter on where the white is. I can do this because the bottom's going to be blue. So that black line's almost going to disappear and it's probably going to be in the hem anyway. These ones here. And I stopped doing this thing too soon. Here we go. As you can see, I'm just kind of working the angle of the bottle around where I want it to go. Making sure that you don't slide your hand through the black you've already done. That is the tricky bit. You also want to make sure that you don't have any lumps in your Gouda, because if you have lumps, they clog up the bottle terribly. Okay, I'm probably going to be right in your way here, so you might want to go around the other side. This one is nice because it's already dry, so I can slide my hand over it. If it wasn't, I'd be like, okay, which way do I? Sometimes you just have to let some lines dry before you can do the next. If you can be patient enough to do that. Now I'm not going to continue with this line because I want to turn my hand this way to write, to write. Because for some reason, when I'm doing letters, it seems to be easier for my brain if I do them the way they are supposed to be done. Also, these letters, which you guys will be doing some of them, are an actual font, which I traced and which we will be tracing on some of the others at the pixelated distance, because on the wall, I should actually move the projector a little closer than it was. I tend to be doing large things, and so here I was doing a small thing. Your pixels are a little differently. So if you know how the letter's supposed to go and you want to fine tune it a little bit to be correct, that's great. For instance, this one here, I did with two ends, and this one here comes to a point. Oh, well. Sort of make them sort of match. Doesn't matter too much. These are going to be 10 feet up in the air. And we'll be seeing what we see. This line is also just going to be sort of like a shadow around the letters, because the letters will be white and the letters will be black. So they'll blend together. You won't even really see this line. I mean, it'll be the edge of the letter, but you won't see it, the line by itself. Sometimes you'll see a line by itself depending on where it is, but usually with heraldry, I didn't like that. Okay, so here's one of these going to the edge. And it's under a pen. What a perfect example. So you need to make sure that you get all of that edge so that it is well done to the edge, or you'll have the wrong color suddenly joining in. You don't want that. Okay, we're coming up here. Now this is a terrible angle to be hanging over your thing. I would highly suggest sitting in a chair or having it be higher up, depending on your back strength. You don't want to kill yourself, and it's easy to get so focused on your work, forget to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. And there's the E that looks like a duck. We have this N here. As you see, the more sweeping you do, the smoother your lines usually. Right here, the N went joggy jog. The reason is because there's a tension point here where this rubber band is, and I didn't calculate that well enough as I was coming around that corner. I should have slowed down, given it just a little bit of a rise, and I just went around the corner and the silk went boink like that. And so you get a little jog. Doesn't matter. But that is one of the things that you'll want to learn to watch for where you pin. This one doesn't have as many pins in it as I put in those because I wanted you guys to have a really stable surface. I've gotten used to working with, it's really tight here and it's really flexible here. You can actually see the difference as I'm running my finger along here. This is tight and then it goes dip. I've gotten used to working like that, so I'm fine with it, but it's easier if you have a more smooth surface. The more pins and rubber bands you put in, the more smooth the surface is going to be.
It says kitchen, right?
It does. Good job. This is going to go on my kitchen tent. I realized I needed to have a display one to do for you guys. I didn't know how many people were coming and I wanted to let you guys do the baronial ones. And I was like, what am I going to do? If I do one of those, they'll have fewer to do. So I thought, oh, my kitchen needs a couple of banners on its poles. All right. Just so I can tell the difference between them, I'm going to put a dot on this one so I know that it is fresh. And then we'll know that this one is the one that isn't fresh. The next thing is to show you how the Gouda works. I put a pin. I put a pin. No, it's not, but it does look like one. I put a pin in the top of the bottle, even in between stuff. That helps it not clog up in there because that will dry up pretty quickly. But if you put a pin in, it slows it down. And at least when you pull the pin in, you have that much that the Gouda can go through, which is usually enough. Different sizes will allow different sizes of pin, which is an interesting complication. All right. Wait, here, just a moment.
Speaker. Go cast receive.
Paint as well as Dynaflow and water. The main thing about this stuff is it settles out. And so making sure that you look at the bottom of whatever your container is and make sure that your dye is actually floating. Your pigment is actually in the paint. It's really important. I one time painted something and went, wow, that doesn't really show very much. That's because it was all in the bottom of the jar and I hadn't shaken it up well enough. I like to use little tiny water bottles to mix my dye and stuff in. They're really cute. I'm reusing something. The lid screws on really nice and tight. And the Dynaflow comes in little jars like this, unless you get the larger. And the larger ones have little tiny lids, like little tiny itty bitty lids that I can't get a brush down in reliably. So I usually transfer into this when I'm mixing things. I use these little cups or these little cups. When I'm painting, this for the foam brushes works very nicely. These are really nice because you don't put much dye in it. So even if you spill it, it's not as much dye that you spill. Okay. Did I get a blue one? No, I didn't. One of the other tricks that I use is I always paint my light colors first. If you paint your light colors and then you spill a drop of a dark color onto it, it's not going to flow through the silk because there's already dye there. And so it's going to hold it up. Where if you paint with the dark colors first and you go over an edge into a light color, it's really hard to cover up that dark color in your light color. So I always paint my light colors first and then go from there. I'm gonna try out. Oh, I told you that I got little brushes. These are the little Okay, so I had been looking up size 12 paintbrushes and it linked me to this. I don't know why. I had said large brush. I thought they were giving me a large brush. It's not a large brush, but that's okay. It's really cute. I thought I would try it out and see how it works. Right in here between these letters, it's gonna be fantastic. Oh, you're gonna love this little brush. It's very nice in between these letters. Okay, so you might want to be able to see this. When you're painting with the dye, it's just like coloring, but instead of coloring all along the line, you color from the center and you squidge it up to the line. That's a little harder to see with the white where it's going because it's a little harder to see where it's going. If you can get the angle, you'll be able to see.
Like coloring with a
where
white
it's going.
crayon. You can tell you're
Yeah,
It's a little shiny.
it's a little shiny. If you know what you're looking for, you can see it. Okay, now let's show you what happens with the blue. The blue is gonna be
A pen
fun.
lamp would probably work really well for people who can't.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I don't, oh, here, this one will work. All right, so we got the blue. All right, you guys ready for this? Here, oh, you need to come watch. This is the whoosh. This is where it flows through. All right, let's do the flower because the flower is. Here we go. So we're going to start in the center of the flower, and can you see how it's flowing out from the paintbrush? Whoosh. And it just goes whoosh. But if I get too close to the edge, it'll just whoosh and pool and go right up over the edge. You also want to think about your level because the dye is water and water is liquid. And so it's going to flow gravitationally. So if your silk is at an angle, it's going to pool on one side or the other. Also, as I'm painting, I tend to put my finger down here. And so if I put my finger down here and I'm putting pressure on it, all of a sudden it's at an angle and I might just drag it right through. Here, everybody come look. This spot right here, I did not close the resist. So I missed it. I'm going to go ahead and paint right there and we'll see what happens, but it's a good example. And if it bleeds out a little bit into the cross space, it'll be great because you'll get to see what happens when you don't close it. Now, I don't know if it will because it depends on how much it isn't closed, but we'll see here. When I put this there, if it travels through or not. Sometimes there's enough resist in the fibers around it that it stops it, which it looks like it did. But you could see that's the kind of thing that you always want to spot check your work for, is that you have all closed lines. It's very important. All right, you see how easy this is? It's easier than painting because it does the work for you of going right out and filling in all the space. All you have to do is just get it on the surface. Zoopy doopy doo.
I don't know, man. I don't think you can do this because you've had enough painting.
This is much more fun than house painting. I can say that for sure. All right, so any questions so far? No, looks pretty obvious to you. All right, fantastic. And glad. Thus ends the how-to speech making by Dame Johanna and begins the how you get to try it. All right, so first off, we need to put some pins into silk. Where did I put the pipe on? Putting lids back on bottles. Oh, is a good idea. All right, so come on over. We'll get some rubber bands, some pins, and I got some silk ingredients. Come on over to the table. So. Okay. All right, so you want to probably put the pin in the same side as much as possible, but Kat, do you want to bring the camera over? Okay. I did sort of wander off. Connected. Yes, I also didn't bring the speaker, so. Oh, you did, fantastic. I want it. It's that. All right, so. Right, no, that makes sense, that makes sense. Well, it is sort of hands-on, there's so much to say. When you're putting the pins in, I like to put pins in the corners, then fold it in half, put a pin in the center, because I'm a centrist. Then I fold that in half. And now, here's the tricky bit, you've got 2 layers, or on the long side, you'll have even more layers. And when you put the pin in, I usually slide the inside one out just a little bit, and then leave a little tiny bit of space here, and then I can pin this one and pin this one without having to fold it again. The other option is to put little marks on it, and then you can open it up and know where to pin. So you can do it either way. I just do it that way, but you can do it however you want. If you want to fold it and put a little pencil mark on, so that's easier to see, then go for that. In and out with the pins. So you'll probably want, what do I have in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You'll probably want 8 on the long side and 5 on the short side. Corey, you want to come in? Is there something bad? Is there anything else? Not really. I mean, there is, but, you don't need to worry about it. With the flag, there is you can see there's a slightly more tiny side. But with the habotai, it's so close. It's not gonna matter. You're gonna paint on it anyway. With the chamois, it actually makes a big difference if one side is just a little tiny bit crinkly. I'm trying to figure out if I'm doing this right. So probably a little bit closer to the seam, but that a little tiny bit to the hem is fine, but that's good on the hem. I mean, on the hem. He's the answer. Oh, great. Are you gonna take off? All right, Tori, thanks for coming. Did you get a packet of papers?
Yeah.
I'll post the YouTube video and then post when I post it.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
So,
Like absolutely perfect.
How much of the silk do you want to be under the pin? Because that is very little. Yeah, that's very little under the pin, so that's gonna have very little more.
Nope. Oh, okay. No, you don't want too much because it will buckle the silk. So yeah, no, that's a really good question. 1/8 of an inch or less.
And can you show that to the camera?
That's what
Because most people don't know what 1/8 of an inch is.
Yes, as soon as they pin one. Here we go. I'm gonna steal yours. So this is perfect. So here you go. This is a really nice amount.
There.
There. A really nice amount. It's not focusing. Yeah,
It's close enough.
You get the idea.
Yeah.
So it's not very much under the pin. Thank you. That was a great. And here's your box. Yeah, there's the spinning wheel all put together.
Oh, no, did you do the cross? Yeah, you did the cross, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's definitely pretty range if it was something useful. It's missing a whole piece, but it's nice to put something together so I don't.
but I had like.
we brought it to the demo.
I mean, I had never sat down and looked at what pieces were missing in a one that was not assembled. Oh, makes a big difference if the thing is all put together.
Since none of you were at
Oh, congratulations.
Well, with the Birmingham. I should actually, maybe I can make another one, because it's the same thing. Thank you. No. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Do you guys mind being in the video? Because right now it's staring at empty space because somebody walked away.
I mean, I think we can do that.
Hi, you can look at my belly.
How many pins are you putting in?
So
200.
about 6 inches apart is the maximum distance apart. And you really don't need them more than 3 to 4 inches. If you are doing something that has not a lot of detail on it, you can get away with farther apart, but it's just going to make everything harder to do well. I forgot to put up on the screen the ones that we're making.
I'm just trying not to lose blood.
She didn't either. It's fine.
I don't know, we should do it first.
Oh, well, this is not a hugely great project, but yes, in the box. And it's not sanitizing, it's just wiping the oil.
Okay.
Fortunately, once you've done it, there's an indicator of where you were at.
We do need to go, right? Didn't you also
I
put it on right inside?
think that's what you've done.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we should all be on the same side.
Exactly. Equal.
I think it's because it's so exactly the way I folded it.
Yeah.
With the texting machine today. Sit down and clean the events.
Well, we're gonna do the tracing part next, so
Well, you went over tracing, didn't you?
talk about it, we haven't actually done it. Do you wanna put a little of the tracing in there, not the whole thing?
Do you think
I think
somebody?
so.
Okay,
I
So-
think just a little bit of it with the projection, because it is, there are a few things about it that are the.
we're gonna pause the recording now. We will restart it when we get to the next step.
So. For how to trace. So the interesting thing about using the projector and also seeing how it moves. So you just kind of have to like work with that. You're gonna figure out where this is. So like here, this is when I pushed in, it's actually missing the bottom here quite a bit. So probably we'll get a little something and put under this thing so that it evens out. So because I'm missing at the top too. So it's actually either this is bowing or I didn't get this one high enough, or it just has to do with the way the projector is hitting it. So that really needs to come up just a little bit like that. This here, you put this on like this, and then when you go to do it, you just want to, as I said, draw the pencil. No, push the pencil like that. And then as you see, when it comes up, you're like, the line's not there, but if you push it down, the line is there. So it's an odd little fudgy thing. You'll want to watch the bottom of the ribbon that's on the back. So. All right, so there you go. Have at it. Have fun. If you want the little, if you want the little. Or one of the sides of this one has spots. Okay, so that's all for the tracing. Just go and do it.
So pausing the recording again. We are closing out the recording.